Before you ever see abundance in your hands, it must be settled in your heart. Long before doors open on the outside, something has to shift on the inside. Too many people are praying for change while thinking in circles of lack, fear, and limitation. But today, something deeper is being stirred within you. This is not about chasing money. It's about training your mind to agree with victory, expectation, and increase. A trained mind refuses to bow to circumstances. It does not speak what it sees, it speaks what it believes. When pressure rises, it doesn't panic, it proclaims. When delays come, it doesn't quit, it stands firm. A millionaire mindset is not arrogance, it is alignment. It is choosing to think higher when everything around you pulls lower. It is daring to believe that provision is not scarce, opportunities are not random, and your future is not fragile. Your mind must be disciplined to expect overflow, not just enough. Every great breakthrough begins with a renewed thought pattern. You don't rise to the level of your income, you rise to the level of your belief. If you train your mind to agree with limitation, you will live there. But if you train it to agree with abundance, wisdom, and bold action, your life must follow. Speak life over your future. Guard what you allow into your thoughts. Refuse to rehearse defeat. The moment your thinking changes, direction changes. And when direction changes, results cannot stay the same. Train your mind daily, intentionally, faithfully, and watch your life begin to move in a new direction. What you see with your natural eyes is not the full story of your life. Circumstances are loud, but they are not final. Bills, pressure, delays, closed doors, and slow seasons all try to announce limits, but they are only temporary reports. If your thinking is tied only to what you see, your faith will rise and fall with conditions. A trained mind learns to look past appearances and anchor itself to expectation. Vision always comes before manifestation. Every meaningful change in life begins when someone decides not to let present facts define future possibilities. Seeing beyond what is visible is not denial, it is discipline. It is the choice to believe that what is unfolding is bigger than what is showing. When your mind stretches beyond the moment, fear loses authority and hope gains structure. You begin to live from conviction rather than reaction, and that inner shift quietly rewrites the direction of your life. When you think beyond what you see, you stop giving circumstances permission to dictate your emotions. Many people are emotionally exhausted because their thoughts are chained to their surroundings. A trained mind learns to pause, breathe, and question the narrative that pressure tries to tell. Just because something looks impossible does not mean it is unavailable. Just because progress feels slow does not mean movement has stopped. Growth often happens underground, unseen, uncelebrated, but very real. Thinking beyond sight means trusting that unseen preparation is taking place. It means understanding that timing is not punishment and delay is not denial. This way of thinking builds patience without passivity and confidence without arrogance. You remain calm while others panic, steady while others retreat. Inner peace becomes your advantage and clarity becomes your strength. A mind trained to think beyond what it sees learns to separate facts from truth. Facts describe conditions, truth determines direction. The fact may be lack, but the truth is potential. The fact may be struggle, but the truth is development. When you allow truth to dominate your thinking, facts begin to lose their emotional control. This does not remove challenges, but it changes how you stand inside them. You stop shrinking under pressure and start growing through resistance. Every obstacle becomes information, not intimidation. Every setback becomes instruction, not identity. This kind of thinking rewires how you respond to life. Instead of asking why something is happening, you begin asking what is being formed within you. Perspective shifts from survival to purpose. Thinking beyond what you see also requires guarding what you consistently focus on. Repeated images create repeated beliefs. If your mind is constantly fed with fear, comparison, and limitation, it will struggle to imagine abundance and progress. A trained mind becomes selective. It learns when to disconnect from noise and reconnect with vision. Silence becomes productive because it allows imagination to work without interruption. In addition to not being in those quiet moments, new ideas are born, confidence is restored, and direction becomes clearer. Your inner dialogue begins to change. Instead of rehearsing problems, you begin rehearsing solutions. Instead of replaying past failures, you begin visualizing future progress. Focus becomes a creative force rather than a draining habit. When you think beyond what you see, you begin to live from the inside out. Your decisions are no longer emotional reactions, but intentional responses. You move with purpose even when results are not immediate. Confidence becomes rooted, not fragile. You stop waiting for external permission to believe bigger. Inner vision becomes the blueprint that guides your actions, your discipline, and your consistency. Even in uncertainty, you remain forward-focused. Even in lack, you stay expectation-driven. This mindset quietly trains you for levels you have not yet reached, shaping character before success and stability before increase. Words are not casual sounds, they are carriers of direction. Long before wealth shows up in accounts, contracts, or opportunities, it begins forming in the language a person allows themselves to speak. Every repeated statement trains the mind to expect a certain outcome. When words are careless, faith weakens. When words are intentional, belief strengthens. Speaking words that build wealth is not about pretending problems don't exist, but about refusing to let negative speech design your future. Your mouth becomes a steering wheel for your life, turning you toward increase or limitation. What you consistently say shapes what you consistently prepare for. When your words agree with fear, fear grows confidence. When your words agree with confidence and wisdom, new pathways quietly open. The discipline of speech is one of the most powerful habits of a trained, prosperous mind. Many people unknowingly sabotage progress through daily conversations. Complaints, self-doubt, and casual negativity feel harmless, but they quietly program the mind for scarcity. When someone repeatedly says they are stuck, broke, or unlucky, the mind accepts it as instruction and begins to behave accordingly. Speaking words that build wealth means becoming aware of how often language reinforces limitation. Healing. It is choosing to stop rehearsing lack and start declaring growth, learning, and improvement. Even when results have not yet changed, speech can create emotional stability and expectation. Words begin to lift your internal posture. Confidence rises not because circumstances improved, but because your inner narrative did. That internal shift becomes visible in how you act, plan, and take risks. Speaking wealth-building words also aligns your thoughts with possibility rather than pressure. The mind follows the mouth. When you speak about opportunity, wisdom, and increase, your thinking begins to search for them. You become more alert, more creative, and more solutions-oriented. Language sharpens awareness. A person who speaks defeat unconsciously avoids responsibility, while a person who speaks progress becomes more willing to act. Words create mental permission. They tell the mind what is allowed and what is possible. When you speak growth, you give yourself permission to learn. When you speak abundance, you give yourself permission to expect more. Over time, this changes how you interpret events. Challenges no longer feel like proof of failure, but part of development. The consistency of your speech matters more than intensity. Occasional positive statements cannot overpower daily negative talk. A trained speaker of wealth understands repetition. Just as negative patterns were learned over time, new patterns are built the same way. Speaking wisely in private is as important as speaking wisely in public. What you say to yourself when no one hears shapes self-respect and self-belief. Inner dialogue sets the tone for discipline, patience, and endurance. When pressure comes, trained speech keeps you steady. You don't collapse into panic language. You default to calm, focused expression. That stability becomes attractive to opportunities, partnerships, and trust. Speaking words that build wealth also creates alignment between belief and action. When your words reflect confidence, your actions naturally follow. You prepare better, plan longer, and commit deeper. Speech reinforces identity. You stop seeing yourself as someone hoping for change and start seeing yourself as someone moving toward it. Your language becomes forward-facing, purposeful, and intentional. Over time, your environment begins to mirror your mindset. People respond differently to those who speak with clarity and expectation. Decisions become cleaner. Direction becomes clearer. Language becomes a daily investment, shaping not just what you say, but how you live. And defeated thoughts do not arrive loudly. They slip in quietly, dressed as realism, caution, or past experience. If left unchecked, they become familiar voices that feel logical and safe. A disciplined mind learns to recognize these thoughts before they settle. Just because a thought appears does not mean it deserves agreement. Training the mind begins with awareness, noticing when inner dialogue shifts from possibility to limitation. Defeated thinking often sounds reasonable, but it drains courage and dulls expectation. When the mind is not disciplined, it rehearses past losses and projects them into the future. Discipline interrupts this cycle. It replaces passive acceptance with intentional redirection. Each time a defeated thought is challenged, mental strength grows. The mind becomes less reactive and more deliberate. This is not suppression, it is leadership. You are not denying difficulty, but refusing to let it define identity or direction. Many defeated thoughts are rooted in memory rather than truth. Past failures, disappointments, or slow seasons leave impressions that try to govern present decisions. Without discipline, the mind treats memory as prophecy. A trained mind learns to separate what happened from what is happening. Yesterday's outcome does not own today's potential. Discipline creates emotional boundaries and allows you to acknowledge pain without living inside it. Instead of replaying mistakes, the mind begins to extract lessons and move forward. This shift is powerful because it transforms regret into wisdom. When defeated thoughts surface, discipline asks better questions. What can be learned here? What can be done differently? What is still possible? This approach builds resilience and keeps momentum alive even in uncertain seasons. Disciplining defeated thoughts also requires consistency. One moment of courage does not rewrite a habit of doubt. Patterns are broken through repetition. Each time you redirect your thinking, you weaken the old pathway and strengthen a new one. Over time, confidence becomes more natural than fear. The mind stops defaulting to worst-case scenarios and begins expecting workable solutions. This process requires patience because mental training is invisible before it becomes visible. There may be days when defeated thoughts return stronger, but discipline does not panic. It remains steady. Progress is not measured by the absence of negative thoughts, but by the speed at which they are corrected. That correction is a sign of growth. A disciplined mind also understands the influence of environment on thought life. What you hear, watch, and repeatedly engage with shapes your inner dialogue. Defeated thoughts often thrive in spaces filled with constant negativity, comparison, and distraction. Discipline becomes selective. It limits exposure to voices that reinforce fear and increases exposure to ideas that stretch vision. Silence becomes a tool, not an absence. In quiet moments, the mind can reset and realign. This intentional environment makes it easier to maintain mental strength under pressure. You begin to notice how peace increases when inputs improve. Thought discipline becomes less exhausting when surroundings support growth rather than sabotage it. When defeated thoughts are disciplined, identity begins to change. You no longer see yourself as someone trying to survive circumstances, but as someone developing strength through them. Confidence becomes internal rather than dependent on outcomes. Even in setbacks, you remain composed. Even in uncertainty, you stay forward-focused. This mental posture attracts clarity and endurance. Decisions become less emotional and more intentional. You stop negotiating with doubt and start leading your thinking with purpose. Over time, disciplined thought patterns become instinctive. You respond differently, speak differently, and carry yourself differently. Inner stability becomes a quiet advantage, shaping the way you move through every season. Expectation is not wishful thinking, it is an inner posture that shapes how you approach life. What you expect determines what you prepare for, and what you prepare for determines what you experience. Many people live beneath their potential, not because they lack ability, but because they lowered expectation to match past disappointments. When expectation shrinks, effort shrinks with it. A mind trained for growth learns to raise expectation deliberately, even when evidence feels thin. Expecting more is an act of courage. It says your future is not limited by yesterday's outcomes. It says there is room to grow, learn, and expand. This expectation changes how you see opportunities. Instead of dismissing them as unlikely, you consider them possible. Instead of hesitating, you lean in. Inner permission begins with expectation, and permission opens the door to movement. When you expect more, your standards rise quietly. You become less tolerant of habits that drain progress and more committed to choices that build strength. Expectation influences discipline. You show up differently when you believe more is available. Time is treated with greater respect. Energy is invested more intentionally. You begin to plan beyond immediate needs and think in terms of long-term impact. This shift is subtle but powerful. Expectation trains the mind to look ahead instead of settling in comfort. Comfort asks for ease. Expectation asks for growth. Growth requires patience, consistency, and vision. When expectation is healthy, pressure no longer feels like punishment but preparation. You begin to sense that what you are building now is connected to something larger ahead. Expecting more also reshapes how you respond to resistance. Resistance is inevitable, but expectation determines interpretation. Without expectation, obstacles feel like confirmation to stop. With expectation, obstacles feel like proof that movement is happening. A mind trained to expect more does not panic at difficulty. It adjusts, learns, and continues. This resilience is built through belief, not circumstance. Expectation fuels persistence. It keeps you moving when results are delayed and motivation fluctuates. You understand that growth is rarely linear. There are pauses, recalibrations, and seasons of unseen progress. Expectation allows you to stay committed during those seasons. You do not rush the process, but you do not abandon it either. When you expect more, your self-permeation begins to align with responsibility. You stop seeing yourself as someone waiting for opportunity and start seeing yourself as someone preparing to steward it. Expectation invites maturity. You take ownership of decisions, habits, and direction. Blame loses its appeal because growth requires accountability. This does not mean perfection, but it does mean intentionality. You become more honest with yourself about where change is needed. Expectation sharpens focus. Distractions lose power because vision gains clarity. You begin to recognize which paths align with your future and which only satisfy the moment. This clarity creates confidence that is calm, not forced. Expecting more because you're called for more creates an internal agreement with purpose. You no longer measure life only by comfort or approval, but by alignment. Alignment brings peace even when the path is demanding. You trust that stretching is necessary for expansion. Expectation keeps your heart open to learning and your mind open to possibility. You begin to approach each season as preparation for the next. Small steps feel meaningful because they are connected to something bigger. Inner confidence deepens as you remain faithful to growth. This expectation quietly shapes your choices, strengthens endurance, and keeps your vision alive through every stage. As we bring these thoughts together, remember that transformation always begins within. A trained, prosperous life is never built by accident, but by intention, by choosing what you think, what you speak, and what you expect. When you learn to think beyond what you see, you stop allowing temporary conditions to dictate permanent beliefs. You realize that vision comes before evidence, and inner conviction always precedes outer change. Your life begins to move in the direction of your strongest thoughts. When you choose to speak words that build wealth, you are not just changing language, you are reshaping identity. Your words guide your focus, steady your emotions, and prepare your mind for growth. They create an atmosphere where confidence can breathe and wisdom can operate. Over time, disciplined speech becomes a daily investment, quietly shaping decisions, habits, and outcomes. Discipline defeated thoughts is where true strength is formed. Every time you refuse to agree with fear, doubt, or limitation, you reclaim authority over your direction. You learn that thoughts are visitors, not rulers. With consistency and awareness, resilience replaces hesitation, and clarity replaces confusion. Inner stability becomes your foundation, allowing you to stand firm regardless of external pressure. And when you expect more because you're called for more, your standards rise, your focus sharpens, and your preparation deepens. Expectation aligns you with purpose. It keeps you moving when progress feels slow, and faithful when results are unseen. You begin to live with intention, confidence, and quiet determination, knowing that growth is unfolding even when it is not yet visible. This is the journey of training your mind. Not for a moment, but for a lifetime. Not for survival, but for impact. Stay consistent, stay focused, and stay expectant. Thank you for listening. Thank you for believing. And may wisdom, strength, and abundance guide every step you take. God bless you always.